Well, this week it's the Epiphany, and it's a very special day. And because it's at the beginning of the year, I'm going to go outside because I want to ask God to bless my house for the year ahead. It's a bit cold outside, so I'm going to put my coat on. Perhaps you'd like to come with me. So let's go outside. So there's my front door, and there's the sign that says the vicarage, and underneath it I've put some chalk marks. Can you see them? It says CMB, and there's a 20 there and a 21 there. It's Casper and Melchior and Balthazar visited the baby king 2021 years ago. May the baby king Jesus come and bless this house this year. Amen. So there, I've asked God to bless my house. Well, this week has the date the 6th of January in it, and on the 6th of January it's the Epiphany, and on the Epiphany we remember the story about the 3 wise men who went to visit Jesus in the stable, and they took some precious gifts to him. I wonder if you can remember what they were. Well, I've got a story for you today about the 4th wise man. I'm not sure whether this story actually happened, but it's a really good story. There were 4 wise men: Casper, Melchior, Balthazar, and maybe one you haven't heard of, Artaban. He came from Persia. The wise men were stargazers, they were astronomers, and they were looking out with their telescopes for a very special star to appear in the east, because they'd looked in their books and they knew that if a star appeared in the east, a new king would be born. And their plan was that they would set off when the star appeared and meet up and travel, taking special presents to the newborn king. Artaban came from Persia. His gifts were precious jewels. He had a red ruby, a blue sapphire, big sapphire, and a pearl of great price. So when the star appeared in the east, they set off to an agreed meeting place. But on the way, Artaban came across a very sick man on the roadside, and he couldn't pass by. He had to help that man. I wonder if you remember a story about a man on the roadside and people passing by on the other side but one person stopping. Well, Artaban stopped to help, which made him really late. And when he got to the meeting point, he found out that the other wise men had already left. So Artaban used his sapphire to buy a really fast camel. He's the camel. And he set off at great speed across the desert to catch up. But when he got to Bethlehem, he found he was too late. The town was in uproar. Mary and Joseph and the baby, the new king, had fled to Egypt. They were now refugees, and the other wise men had given their presents, and then they'd gone home because there was a really bad king who was worried about a new king. So he'd made an order to have all the baby boys in Bethlehem killed. He wasn't a good king. So when Artaban got to Bethlehem, the whole place was full of soldiers who were looking for baby boys. And he came to face with a group of soldiers who were about to tear a baby boy out of his mother's arms. Eventually, Artaban managed to persuade them not to. He tried to stop them, and in the end, he had to give them his red ruby to stop them taking the baby boy. So he'd already used his sapphire to buy the camel and his ruby to help the baby boy. So poor Artaban, he spent ages searching high and low. He travelled to Egypt, but couldn't find the family there. And eventually, after years of travelling, he came to Jerusalem. It was 30 years later, and that little baby boy had grown up. And just like Bethlehem, Jerusalem, the atmosphere was tense, and the city was in uproar, and executions were taking place. And he heard about one man who strangely had been born in Bethlehem, who'd been given presents of gold, frankincense and myrrh. He heard that this man was about to be killed. He was special. He was the Messiah, the King, the Anointed One. So Artaban hurried up the hill. He could see a cross in the distance, but on the way he ran into a group of men dragging a young girl away. They were going to sell her into slavery. She begged Artaban for help, so he used his last jewel, his pearl, to pay for her freedom. And he was sad because he never got to see the king. But at that moment there was an earthquake knocking Artaban off his feet, and he heard a voice from heaven speaking to him. It was the voice of the king. "Come, you are blessed, for I was hungry and you gave me food, thirsty and you gave me a drink, a stranger and you welcomed me, naked and you clothed me, and sick and you visited me." But Artaban by now was a very old man, and he said, "Lord, I have searched for you for 30 years, and I've never seen you or cared for you." And the king said, "Truly I tell you, just as you did for all these people, so you did for me." And so Artaban ended his journey. His treasures were accepted because he had found the king.